Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 5, Episode 6. And oh boy, it's going to be a good one. So I'm going to try to take as little time as possible at the beginning to sort of set you up with what we're doing, and then we'll jump straight into it. So I have my first non-in-the-room-with-me guest of the season, which is very exciting. And it's somebody who I've talked about before on the podcast. So I'm really excited for that. And my guest today is going to be Luis Vega, which is also probably more commonly known as MrCameraJunkie on his own YouTube channel, his own live streams, and seemingly every other live stream that takes place on YouTube in the chat section. So we're going to dive into Luis a little bit and get to know him. I did talk quite a bit about him and sort of his journey. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but at least an overview a couple weeks ago in the episode called The Power of One. So if you want to know more about that and some examples, you can go check out that episode. And Luis has also been on some really great podcasts lately. You can go check out Jared Spink's The Hive podcast. Jared was a guest a while back. I've been on Jared's podcast. You probably know Jared by now, if you're not Jared, literally listening to this. So if you want to also then hear more of Luis there, we could do that. And I wanted to make sure that while I had some time with him today, that we cover not just what has been covered on other shows, but we kind of also get more. We get to know a little bit more. So that way, if you hear all these different interviews and watch all these different videos, you kind of can get more of a full picture. But before I just waste any more time talking by myself here, I'm going to bring on our guest. So this is Luis Vega, Mr. Camera Junkie.
How you doing, Tom?
I'm good. I don't know why I made an air horn sound, even though I have the sound effect, but it's fine. How are you doing? I'm so glad we could connect, because we've not had a long one-on-one conversation before. So I'm excited for this.
Me too, man. I'm super excited to be here. I can't tell you how the intro music just got me hyped up, because I've heard it so many times, and now I'm like, wow, I'm in the green room. This is super exciting for me.
Yes, I hope all the snacks and things are up to your standards and the service best. And everything. No, but I'm so glad you're here, because I've told sort of the story, like we originally met basically through live streams on YouTube and in the chats of live streams, and then got to know each other a little bit through there. And then when Clubhouse really blew up at the beginning of 2021, we spent some time there. And then especially through like the eCam groups and just all that kind of stuff, like, you, me, and Heather and I have had a lot of conversation. It's been awesome, because you're one of our just favorite people in general, and everything about what you do, how you do it, like the perspective you bring to it it's so good and it's so refreshing. So your channel is doing really well. We'll kind of just jump straight into there, because I think it was only like 2 weeks ago that you were doing a live stream to celebrate the 700 subscriber milestone, I think. And now you're basically at 750, which is basically at 800. It's crazy how fast it, like once it gets going, it just picks up, and that's cool. And obviously people are discovering Mr. Camera Junkie. So can you, without me putting words in your mouth, tell us a little bit about, who you are, what your channel is, all that good stuff?
Sure. My name's Luis, as Tom said before. I'm also known as Mr. Camera Junkie. I have a photography, videography channel on YouTube that actually helps new photographers and videographers better understand comprehensive photography terms that might be putting off to a lot of people. And what I try to do is just break it down into more layman's terms to give you a better understanding of your own equipment.
I like it. And because you do say, I believe, this is from your channel's About page, I believe that for someone to become the best photographer they can be, the camera they hold is the last thing that matters.
And that is very true in my eye. Once you comprehend photography in its truest form, then it really doesn't matter which camera brand that you have. You already know what you're going to want to get out of the photograph or the video. You already know what you want as your outcome. So then you just tailor whichever camera you're using to your needs.
Yeah. And once you get to know, like, there's always that fine line of the gear doesn't matter, the gear does matter. Like it matters it matters to a point, like the difference between 6-year-old phone camera and even just a current like Canon Rebel is going to be really huge. But the difference between a Canon EOS R and a Canon R6 is like, okay, there's differences, but ultimately it's going to come down to what you're doing with it. And the more you can get to know the actual thing that you have and how it works, what you're doing with it, that's going to make like all the difference in the world. So I don't know if I actually know this, I'm sure I've heard you talk about it, but how did how'd you become a junkie for cameras? Like, where did that even
Well,
begin?
well, that's just me basically putting a name to something that I naturally was. I started my entire journey in elementary school as the morning announcement. So when it came to video and being in front of the screen, I started very young and did that majorly through all of my schooling. And it was when school was over that I didn't have the opportunities available that I fell out of doing, the photography and video, especially here in South Florida.
Yeah, that's I relate to that because for me going to school, it wasn't so much elementary school, but by like middle school and high school, it was the video production classes. Those were the places I wanted to be and use all that stuff. Fortunately, I did have access to like, our 8mm cameras and stuff at home. But as a teacher for these things, I saw that same thing happen so many times where students would be so talented, so passionate about it. And then graduation comes and I'd run into them like working at, a fast food place or something a couple months later. And they're like, yeah, I don't have anything now. There's not much I can do. And it really like broke my heart that if somebody grows out of something, I don't care. Like if you just, I was into this, now I'm not into it anymore, that's fine. But when someone still has it in them and then it goes away due to forces beyond their control, that bums me out. So how did it come back then?
Well, just like everyone else, you fall right out of, the things that you're passionate about once you leave school. And I didn't have options, and the options that were available to me were volunteer based, and I needed transportation, and I didn't have the transportation heading out of high school. So, like everyone else, you fall into just a regular everyday job, and your passion kind of takes a back burner. So, with that being said, throughout just life going on, I fell into the um, computer networking field. And that also led me into the phone repair side of electronics, which is what I'm doing now. And it was this business that actually spawned the want of me wanting to illustrate through video and photography what I was doing with my phone repairs, and that rekindled my passion for cameras that I had at such a young age.
Interesting. So how long ago did that all happen? Did like that's
I would say that would have happened within the last 5 years.
okay. Okay.
That was once my son was born that I decided to change everything over, and it was mostly within the last 3 years that is when I really got back into the photography and video side of it.
Yeah. So was it to do like photos and videos of what you were working on and that's you, or is that like how it was connected?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, what happened with me was I wanted to get better photos and better video that my own iPhone can provide to do or show the repairs that I was doing on iPhone.
Got it.
So I went to my closet and I pulled out my Canon point and shoot camera, and I started using my camera in my car to get better photos and better video.
Nice.
That rekindled that whole passion, and I started using my camera more and more every day until the point where I was using my camera, and with the lens extended, a gust of wind came and pushed it off of the tripod and broke my
Oh
camera.
no.
Right? We all say, oh no, but that's really what started this whole thing with me, because then I was now in the market for a
Mm,
new camera. And that got me to do something that older people do, which is called consumer research. And once I started, falling down the rabbit hole of what I had missed when it comes to
Oh
the
yeah.
technology that is now available comparative to like the turn of the century when I had left it all
The
behind.
turn of the century, yeah.
Yeah, it's been that long for me. It was,
It's crazy
99,
because it's
2000.
true that it was the turn of the century, but I was thinking like
Yeah.
1899. Like, no, but you're right. Yeah, the year 2000, 1999. Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah, so I spent like 3 months on YouTube just reconsuming and re-educating myself on pretty much like 18 years of missed
Oh
technology.
man.
And me being part of the electronic side, fixing, electronics, I also understood the components that were going into these new digital cameras. And that's where I was like, I'm an absolute camera junkie because it's not only about the photos and the video, it's also about the tech and
Mhm.
the components that are inside of these cameras that totally just captivated me.
I love that. That is super cool, and it's true. Like how fast stuff changes. A small personal example of that is I got my first DSLR that shot video in 2010. So it was the Canon T2i, and at that point, all DSLRs that did video had manual focus. And I upgraded to like the 60D, which was also manual focus. We had the 60D and the 5D at my school for my students. Everything's manual focus. So I'm teaching all my students video is always manual focus, period. And that's just how it was. And then several years went by, and when I was starting up my program at a new school, I ordered a bunch of Canon 70Ds because those were just the ones that were out at the time. And same thing, teaching all the kids, like video is manual focus only. There's no such thing as autofocus in video with these cameras. And that was also around when I was like getting into Casey Neistat. And I was like, wait, he's using this same camera, like the 70D for a lot of his videos. How is he manually focusing these insane vlogs? And then I realized, oh no, autofocus exists now and it's actually pretty good and it's only gotten better. But I had no idea. Which I didn't really mind that I was telling my students like you need to learn manual focus. I think that's a good skill, but it was just like, and that was only like 3 or 4 years maybe of time, and this whole new that changes everything. Going from filming stuff with manual focus to being able to film with autofocus, especially if you're a one-person crew, like as most of my students were, and that was crazy. So I can't imagine going back 18 years and being like, okay, everything used to be, tapes and film, and now it's SD cards and hard drives.
Yes.
Oh, man.
That was probably the biggest thing for me because when I left it, we were on digital, but we were still using VHS or super VHS.
Yeah.
So that's what it was, basically still almost like reel to reel. You had to have 3 units, one to play or two to play on different, and then the one to record your master.
Yeah.
So I went from that, right, to Premiere. And I'll tell you the truth, that was the biggest mind melt
Gosh.
because I remember cutting a clip too short and my heart sank because I was thinking on this computer like it was like if I'm doing a 3 camera system and now I'm going to have to rewind these tapes and realign this. And all I had to do was just take the cursor and bring it out a little bit. And what I missed is automatically there. I was like, the fact that I took my first YouTube video, put it into Premiere, and exported it and had it ready for upload within a day
Crazy.
I think that was the biggest thing. That was one of the biggest factors for me saying like, I can do this.
Yeah.
This takes a lot off of the plate.
It's a lot more accessible now than it was back then. Are you, I have a feeling I might know the answer to this, but do you consider yourself more of a photo guy, a video guy, or both, like a hybrid shooter?
I would have to say both.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Photography is something that I'm very passionate about. I love photos, and I love the editing process in photos. Like, there's nothing about that. Like, I just love the time that you need to take to compose an image correctly. And to get the satisfaction of somebody that you were not expecting to see an image and automatically know that it's good.
Yeah.
There's just a certain, something when you can look at an image and you're not asking about what camera settings or anything. You're just
Hmm.
looking at it, you're going, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the part of photography that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
being in video my whole life, and what has now spawned with my YouTube channel and live streaming, there's so, it goes hand in hand, the photo and video. But I would have to definitely say right now it's a mixture of both.
Okay, I mean that totally makes sense, and that brings us to the YouTube channel, which I'm on your channel right now, and I went back to oldest video first because I like to do that to people. But I mean,
Yeah.
your stuff is your oldest video that's public is from a year ago. It says, and
Hmm.
then if we scroll through, we can kind of see like the past year's journey, which has been a pretty big one. So we have like pre-recorded videos where there's a lot of like DIY, camera hacks, how to build your own skate dolly, how to do sound design. You got equipment reviews, and then there's a whole chunk of live streams, whereas like tons and tons of live streams, then back to pre-recorded, and then there's mixes of like pre-recorded and streaming. So, how do you feel about your channel? And like, I mean, tell us about your channel's journey, I guess, and where you want it to go, where it is, what the purpose is of even starting it in the first place. Because I think you and I, even though we're very different, I think we have similar. There's similar key parts of our stories, I think.
Well, when I started, it was just a creative outlet. So it was just something that I always had a passion for. And once I started understanding YouTube and what the platform really is, that's when my curiosity was sparked. And I was like, let's see what I can do with this medium, because it's a lot of fun. And the fact that you basically can do whatever you want on this platform is what really amazes me, because I really see that people don't take advantage of such an amazing opportunity. The reason why I say this is because one of my bucket list type items was to do stand up comedy. So I had the opportunity to get on stage at the Improv here in South Florida, and I did a set on stage. Now, the requirements to do that on an open mic night was I had to ask 10 of my friends to come and sign in for me. They were required to buy drinks just for participating. And if I had 9 friends show up and the 10th didn't make it, I wouldn't even make it on stage. Right. And then on top of that, if I didn't make it on stage, sometimes they would put me all the way to the back, and I was literally just performing for my 10 friends that showed up because everyone else had left. So I was like, I could have done this at home.
Yeah.
Right.
For
And
way
all of
cheaper.
these, yeah, way cheaper. But the thing is that I did all of these things just to get the outcome of me wanting to do this bucket list item for myself. And I jumped through all the hoops that were necessary that were not really practical, but I did them to just get 5 minutes on stage when they decided.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized that the YouTube platforms allows you to create a video of any length. So if you want to take 10 minutes, 15, have at it. And the fact that you don't need to wait for a Wednesday at their times when they say it, you can do all of it at your own accord and upload whenever you want. And that could be your 5 minutes on stage at an improv.
Yeah, it's a lot
And
cheaper for
once,
your friends too.
yeah. And the possibilities that you have with this platform are so immense that it was just like so enticing. And from what I was able to research, that people say you got to do what you're passionate about, so even though I have, information about phone repairs and things like that, my passion, what I can talk about and get my sick my friends sick of hearing me talk about is photography,
Mm-hmm.
cameras, and video. And that literally just came about why I decided to pursue Mr. Camera Junkie.
I like it. I love it. I love it. And it's been, I mean, it's been so cool to see things just keep growing and keep progressing. And the cool part too is I've now seen you, you've been streaming a lot. Like, I think, would you say most of the stuff on your channel is a live stream, or is it, I feel like,
Right now, I would have to say, because I did the 30 days
yeah,
consecutively in December, and then I've been weekly ever since. So
right.
I
So
would
it's a
say
nice
at least
mix.
60 videos on my channel are live streaming now.
Yeah. But
So that would have to be the majority of my videos.
it's been fun though to watch that, like, because you were good at the very beginning, and you're using like the Zoom H5 for a microphone, which sounded great and all this stuff. And now, you're really, really, like, it really feels like you have a handle on it. So much so that now I've seen you on other people's streams, and it almost feels like you're the host sometimes, which is, and I mean that in a good way, not like you show up and take it over, but like,
No, I'm definitely taking that as a compliment.
it's a
Thank
really
you.
good thing. 'Cause there was even a couple weeks ago, you got to go on a stream with was it D Niman and Luria, and like some pretty like some pretty big, well-known YouTube people, especially in like the YouTube strategy, YouTube coaching thing. You popped on the stream, they looked at your channel, and it was so great because at one point I think you played a sound effect and it was music. And I think it was D was like, oh, he was making a joke, like, oh, I'm going to get like a copyright claim. And you're like, no, man, you're going to be totally fine. Like, check it out. It was just like, it was so, like you just showed up and took control of the stream in a way where I don't think most people do. I think most people are very passive, and most people are a little timid, and it's tough to bring in that personality to it. And you do such a good job of that.
Oh, well, that was so much fun. I was able to join D with Gloria Petrucci on their live stream. And yeah, honestly, I would never do anything to harm anybody
Of
else's channel.
course.
So I knew that if I was going to throw a sound effect in there, D, you're good,
Yeah.
So,
That's what you said. You're
but
like,
in
you're
that,
good.
yeah, you're good, man. Like, I ran all these sound effects on my live streams way before I would ever do it on anyone else's. So I made sure that we're 100%. But it was so much fun. And the biggest thing that I took away from that was what he said when I got there. I was just making sure that, I was coming across correctly and that they could hear me. He's like, bro, you're a pro. And I was like, that meant a lot to me, because it was just 6-7 months ago where I was just scratching the surface on live streaming. And to have someone of that caliber in this space, D Niman from the Niminati and Luria Petrucci, that on this platform has been doing it over 15 years, say like, hey, yeah, no, like, we don't have to worry about you, you're a pro. That really means a lot to me. And it goes to show you that, like I've said before, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Oh,
And,
yeah. My
and
mind
there's
was
always
blown
going to
for
be
a second there.
mistakes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I like
But
it.
yeah,
That's a
yeah, because go ahead.
that's to me that's just so it's just so cool because it shows so much how so much of it is related to just doing it, to just jumping in and going for it, and just again and again and making a mistake and then just keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's what, you know, that's what ultimately leads to the growth and the improvement, and then the meeting people and the connections and all that kind of stuff is just jumping in and going for it.
Yeah, because talking about connections, the connections that I've been able to make on this platform are life changing. Because, for example, the friendship that I've been able to have with you and with Heather, being part of the Just Create More community,
Mm-hmm.
so many opportunities that have already been available to me. I'm now working with Doc Rock.
Yeah.
I'm his editor, which is amazing to me
That's so
because,
cool.
yeah, because he's another one that, has has enabled me to see the potential in myself,
Yeah.
for the fact that Doc Rock is a professional editor, you know, like he does that.
Mm-hmm.
And two things happened there, which was the fact that he was able to relinquish what he does to someone else means the world to me, because that's one of the hardest things that all creatives
Oh yeah.
have struggled with, is like relinquishing that. And the second was the fact that I was able to produce a video that was up to his caliber and that he was happy with.
Oh, he's got high
And
standards.
with
Yeah.
exactly, and to have that done is a personal achievement for myself, because what I'm looking to do as a creative is to stay within the space. So let's say I just want to do photography for myself as a complete passion project. I would still have, like the ability to make money doing something else within the creator community that will supplement my needs so that I can continue pursuing my passion, even if the photography side never really takes off like, other people.
Yeah. I mean, just finding ways to make it happen. And Doc is also a good example because it was only, I think, last year he talks about being at the Leap Into Live, like the eCam conference, and saying to himself, like, man, next year I'm going to speak at this thing. And a year later, not only is he speaking at it, but he's like their official community manager. I mean, you just have those moments and you jump in. And when I said that you and I think, have similar key points in our journeys, what I meant was, even though, we have different stories and different experiences, I think for both of us, where YouTube came in was at a point where, things are rough and things are at a low, and then you decide like, okay, I want to put myself out there because why not? I have nothing else to lose, and if I don't, I never will. And you just kind of, you're at that point where you just, something inside you is like, now is the time, I have to do this. And then you put yourself out there, and it can be weird and scary and uncomfortable, but then this entire new world starts to open up, which, even though it is the internet and even though it's YouTube and there's all those things, for the most part, when you put yourself out there like genuinely, authentically, and especially if you have an ultimate goal of like, I also just want to help people learn more about stuff that I like, there's a lot of like open arms who are totally there to help and support. And it's really amazing. And that meant a lot to me to experience that. And when I see other people, I feel like that's a very similar thing that you experienced. And it really makes me so happy when I see other people have that happen. I mean, it's kind of amazing.
It is. I stay in awe with the power of the platform YouTube, because it it has already exceeded like my wildest expectations. Like, I would have never thought that a year ago I'd be sitting on a podcast with Tom Buck, which was somebody that I followed,
That's
on the platform.
the ultimate height right here. It's all
You
downhill
know
from
it,
here. I'm
man.
sorry. You did it. You're done. I
Hey,
don't
at
know.
least I made it, But the thing is that, like you were just saying, to be able to be recognized by the people who I recognized, to be able to jump on a live stream with Dee and Luria. I was on a couple with Viper for the charity event that we're holding for Owen. That's such another illustration of how amazing the community is on this platform. And once I started live streaming, I didn't even have 100 subscribers on my channel at the moment. And the community that I was able to find and build and still growing today still amazes me. And that's why I said it's far exceeded any expectation that I had for the platform, when basically the thing that I wanted was just to have my channel URL, and everything else is bonus.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty cool thing. And Heather and I have, I think I told this to Heather recently, but it was a realization I had for myself. But it was as she was trying to do like her, I don't want to call it a pivot, but just sort of like a different approach to what she's doing. And, she's nervous. Like, is this going to mess everything up? Am I going to fail this? And I was explaining, like, you're at a point, And there's so many people out there that they're not going to let you fail. Like, and I've seen that happen on this platform where people's channels get hacked, people have health problems, people have life problems, whatever it is, and you build this support group and people will not let you fail. And it's not out of like charity or pity or anything. It's just because like we're all in this. Like if you need to get picked up a little bit, we'll pick you up. And then when I need to get picked up, you'll pick me up. And it's just everybody just keeps doing that. And that is a really unique thing, I think, that I haven't seen in other, you know, I don't know if TikTok does that as much, but YouTube really does. Or at least the YouTube community does.
Well, I would have to agree. Like the way that the communities unite here on YouTube is something special. And I think that the way that the platform is built, the way that we can communicate with each other, whether it's through messages or, you know, like comments on a video, that allows that to be built.
Yeah. It's amazing. And so it also comes down to it's easy to look at YouTube and see someone sitting in their super cool RGB lit studio and in their nice camera and all this stuff. And it's just like, well, it's so easy for them, but I couldn't do this because I have 10,000 excuses why. And so, you know, it's nice when creators kind of show their personal side. And a big one, like I'm sure throughout this podcast, people listening probably hear some noises in the background, which is completely fine because you're not just doing this from, you know, perfect, like, oh, I'm just living off a trust fund and everything is cared for and whatever. It's like you're making it happen because it's important. And you're also doing that while being a full-time single dad. That's amazing.
You do hear my son here, and he's the boss.
It's completely fine, by the way. I don't think anyone in here is gonna like. I'm never gonna.
For those who are listening and could hear my son rattling around, his name is Aiden, and he's the boss. Like I said, he's the reason why I do what I do, and he's been here just short 5 years. And in those short 5 years, he's shown me more about life than I had learned in my previous 35.
Wow.
You know, it's a lot of things that we put upon ourselves that are unnecessary. And, you know, seeing my boy wake up every day and not worry about things that are outside of him, knowing that no matter what, things are going to get taken care of, has also shown me the fact that, you know, even though the future, you know, could be daunting for a lot of people, the way that they see it, the way I see it is that the future is not guaranteed. So I'm not going to worry about that. I could only worry about what's going on today and what's on my plate today, because I can't worry about those things that are an eventuality because they're hypothetical still at this moment, because we sometimes forget how to live in the present because we're so worried about the future.
Oh, you're speaking to my core being right now. But when you do that, you're not even saying like, don't, you know, be reckless and don't worry about the future. But by focusing on the present and doing the best you can right now, that will basically automatically make the future better because you're setting up a foundation for the future to show up on. And it's great. It's great that that your son has a dad that he can rely on to always be there, but also that he has a dad who he can watch do things that, you know, do things that are new and do things that are different and put himself out there. And I think that that's a really good role model for anybody, and especially for a young kid who, you know, if some of the things you want him to keep are his ability to just be himself and to be comfortable with himself, seeing you do that, I think is a great way to make sure he always is able to continue feeling those ways.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. But he's the reason why I do it. You know, like we can sit here and what happens is that we get that paralysis by analysis. And we limit ourselves because of a potential negative eventuality when it's usually a positive any time that you do anything. So
and
it's go ahead.
And no, go. I was just gonna say, I mean, you bring that You bring that, maybe it's just because you are like a caring dad, but I feel like you bring that vibe to everything else. So even when you're live streaming to a 55-year-old person, it's like there's still kind of that, like, you're very fun, you're very down to earth, but it's also like, you know, there's a life lesson to be learned here. Like there's nutrients in these calories. It's not just all like empty dessert calories, but you're actually getting your vitamins and your minerals too. And that's a really cool thing that I love about your streams and your videos. And also, I mean, you know, you're all over chats and videos and social media and stuff, but it's like everything you do, it just has that element to it, which is really admirable, and I love it.
Well, that's a really nice compliment. So thank you, Tom.
Yeah, of course.
But
yeah, go
I
ahead.
do that because I noticed and I've realized one thing, that our most valuable commodity is our time. And a lot of people, this is something that I've recently come up with and I've been saying a lot, is that people take time for granted. You know, we expect, or we just assume that next week will be there. When, like I said, we're trying to worry about future events that might not happen because we don't know what's going to happen in our day to day. And we forget to live our day to day because we're so worried about the potentiality of next week, which that, you know, with my son and his situation, has taught me that you have to live each day for its day and make the most of that day. You know, don't take time for granted because you could just be wasting it.
Oh, definitely. That's the mantra of every. If you go back to the very first episode of this podcast from a couple of years ago, that's kind of the underlying theme, was that time's your most valuable resource. There's not a lot of it. Even if you get what is for a human, a lot of it, it's really not that much, you know? And when it's gone, it's gone. And so if there's something that you have that itch of like, I want to try this, I want to do this, I want to whatever, you know, go on stage, do stand-up comedy for a bit. If you don't do it, then it'll just never happen. And you gotta put yourself out there, which I'm very curious too. What was your stand-up act about?
Oh, that's funny, because as a comedian, I also didn't see myself to be limited, because I did look at what I was doing on stage in a form of like, if I'm going to go on stage, I'm not going to allow anything to limit me as far as people's ideas or
Mm-hmm.
norms. And one thing that I've learned in comedy, which this could be a whole different podcast, but I digress, that there's polarizing comedians out there that people will take offense to what they say, but then as a comedian you realize that anyone taking offense is something that they're doing on their own, because the words themselves are powerless. We are the ones that empower words and allow them to affect us. So as a comedian, you know, in that mentality, you can't allow words to determine your act, because if you're going to say something a little bit, you know, to the left just to get a joke out of it, you also have to understand in the realm that you're in, because as a comedian, you have to go there. If not, you're boring, you're dull, and nobody's going to want to listen to you.
Well, there's also, I mean, this was maybe more, at least in the past, or I remember like even in high school, a lot of times I remember making jokes and being a part of jokes that it wasn't that the joke was offensive that was funny. It was how bad the joke was the joke. Like it wasn't even so much what you were saying, but it was the fact that it was being said. That's what was the actual joke. A lot of that kind of subtlety gets lost, you know, online or in type or whatever. So
yeah, because you don't have and the inflections in your
yeah.
voice, you know, to allow people to know that it's a joke in a text message.
I would
Know?
love to see though, like the Mr. Camera Junkie stand up act just end up being like the most vulgar, raunchy, like over the top, explicit
It
thing.
wasn't that bad,
and then back to the live streams that are just like super chill and hang out, and then just like this insane stage thing.
No, but I just basically, my stand up comedy, I made some jokes about it because what I wanted to do with my stand up act, which was, I had already thought about it more than most people have. Some people be like, oh, I would love to do stand up. When I wanted to do my skit, I had some prerequisites that I wanted to knock out of the way that I wanted to do for myself, way like that are more advanced than someone that was going on stage for the first time. So things that I wanted to do on my stand up act was I wanted to write all of my own jokes. I wanted to go up there without a piece of paper or anything written on my hand. And I wanted to engage the audience so that I didn't lose their attention. I was able to do all of those things and I was able to get a rise and laughter out of the crowd while I did my stand up act. And, it was my first time. And I was fortunate enough to have a couple of people shake my hand afterwards and tell me that I did a good job, including the people from the event that were like, hey, anytime you want to come back, you're more than welcome. So that
Oh
was
man,
so much fun and super exhilarating.
that is so cool. I think a lot of people would be way too scared to put themselves out like that. But that I love that so much. So I mean, then YouTube is not scary really after doing something like that, I would imagine.
And that's why I said it. Like for me, particularly, it was different that when I uploaded my first video, it was a lot more exciting
Yeah.
than scary
Yeah.
because I guess I was already built for it, but I also feel that a lot of people confuse those emotions because
Hmm.
physiologically, they are the same. Your body is going to react whether you're, like scared to something or you're excited. The adrenaline starts to kick in. Like I had mentioned before, when I went on live with D Niman, I you might notice it now that I'm going to mention it, but I think my voice even started to crack like when I first started talking. And it wasn't because I was nervous. It was because I didn't know that I was going to be on.
Yeah.
I was in the green room just watching, and then I'm on. And then he's like, hey, what's up? And I'm like, oh, can you hear me? And right at that moment, the adrenaline kicked in
Starts
so hard.
flooding. Oh boy.
Exactly. And that adrenaline monster started kicking in that it made my voice start like fluttering. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, let's just rein it in. And then after a couple of minutes, you'll realize that you just settle into the
Yeah.
conversation. And once you realize that, like now, it's just a conversation that you're having with a friend, it takes a lot of like the burden and stuff off because people are always going to judge,
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
so why are you going to worry about it because you don't have any control of what they're going to say? Just be
Exactly.
you, have fun, and don't waste the opportunity. Don't take time for granted, and do the most that you can with your everyday because
I like that.
it's all you have.
I like that. I'm writing that down because I think I want that to be the title of this episode. Yeah, I'm just making a note to myself. Um, and it's crazy, like you said, being able to do this stuff. Like right now, we are recording a podcast. That's why we agreed to meet at this time and press record and do the things. But we can also just have a conversation, and it happens to be that it's being recorded. And obviously, it's probably going to affect some of the things we say and how it's very back and forth, which is a little different than a normal conversation would be. But that is a cool thing that you're able to do. And I remember a big moment, which is so funny because I don't know what's happening with Clubhouse now. Like if it seems like really popular, but also not popular. And I don't know how it's both. Do you still go on Clubhouse?
I still go on Clubhouse every once in a while to listen.
Okay.
So it's not like the thing with Clubhouse is that it was really popular and still till today I get asked to moderate rooms because people really enjoyed when I moderated
Yeah.
the Clubhouse rooms. But like I was mentioning on a previous live stream that even though I love Clubhouse and it could be insanely popular, I don't love it more than I love YouTube, and YouTube is my preferred platform. So I had to make the decision that, instead of spending the time on Clubhouse, helping out other creators and telling them what they should do with their channels on YouTube, I actually needed to start being on YouTube
Yeah.
and implementing the same advice that I was giving to people on my own channel.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I can imagine, I know you were a good moderator, are a good moderator on Clubhouse, and hearing you talk about like performing stand up and not just performing to the 3 rows, but bringing everybody in and that whole thing. It's that same thing that's going to make you a good moderator in that kind of situation, because you're good at like keeping things organized, bringing people in, resetting when you need to reset, like setting the expectations, ending things gracefully. Like there's that awareness of all those little dynamics that can really, for the people who are part of it, it can make or break it for them. If they feel like they belong, if they feel kind of awkward, and you can sort of be the thing that smooths that out. I think you just have that natural ability to do that, which is, that's why people are going to keep asking you to moderate their rooms, even, so many months later. But what I wanted to point out was one of the first, there were a couple things on Clubhouse that happened for me and Heather that were, regardless of what happens with that platform, it will always have a special place to us for that. The first one was, as soon as we joined, I think you were one of the first people we talked to on there. We were just in our own little room, which was basically like a 3-way just call. But that was like the first time we actually got to talk, and it was really cool to go, oh my gosh, here's somebody that, I've seen in chats for months and months, or I guess it had been months and months, but for several months at that point. And now we're actually talking and being able to explain like, oh, this thing you did, like, had this affect me, this thing you did, like, that was mind blowing. And then a few weeks later, Heather and I did a stream where I was talking about, oh, maybe I want to leave my job, maybe I don't. And the people who were in the chat in that YouTube stream, which included you and Raphael Ludwig, we all went into a Clubhouse room afterwards, which was nice because it wasn't recorded. It wasn't anything like that. And it was just a bunch of people essentially telling me that I wasn't crazy for having these thoughts. And you and Raphael specifically were big voices in saying like, when's going to be the perfect time? Like, you're never going to get to that point where you feel this, you need to take the leap, do that. And that meant a lot to me because I trusted that you guys had my best interest at stake, even though, you don't know every detail about my situation or anything, but you're not trying to just lead me down a wrong road. And also I just respect the way you guys do things and your approach to stuff. So you were very trustworthy people that really, really helped me not feel crazy for having these thoughts. And then, as a lot of people know, then it was the next few months after that everything got kicked into gear, and like there was a huge life shift. And a lot of it came from that specific little meeting we had for, 40 minutes one day, which is crazy.
Well, I do remember all of that because it was really impacting for me with that platform. The fact that was the first time that I was able to tell you personally the effect that you had by just mentioning me on that live stream and putting things into perspective. So once again, thank you, because, every little thing, amounts to what is going on today. And that's like the amazing thing of this platform and what's the possibilities, because it was like a small little seed that's now a plant that's now turning into a bush that, I don't know, could be a tree one day, however that works out. But, like, it's just continues to grow the more that you nurture it. And it's so amazing to see what's come about already. You know?
And that goes for everybody who creates on the platform. Is you can do things that have huge impacts on people. And sometimes you are fortunate enough to actually, be able to tell each other about that. And sometimes you're not. You'll never know. But if you're putting stuff out there and, it's got a positive intention behind it, you're not trying to be awful or anything, you're probably doing that for someone. And that is, that's just a super cool, powerful thing. As we're wrapping up on the hour, I have a couple things that I want to ask that are just sort of like a hodgepodge. So it might not be related, but the first one I feel really guilty about. I feel like I should have asked this a a long time ago, but now I'm curious. Do you prefer to be Luis or Luis?
Okay, well, that's the whole thing. I respond to both. So I really don't like take too much umbrage on the way my name is being pronounced. So anyone who wants to call me Louis or Luis, I'm going to respond basically the same way because of my upbringing. I am Puerto Rican, but growing in South Florida, people wouldn't pronounce my name Luis. And being, growing up in the 80s, they also really weren't too, worried about being politically correct about
Right.
pronunciations of people's names either. So for the people who would address me in English, would majorly call me Luis, and people who address me in Spanish would majorly call me Luis. But the way that I always saw it and that I see it still to today is that any relationship that you have with somebody, you tend to give them a nickname or anything like that, whether it's taking their name and shortening it. So I have a lot of friends that just call me Lou, and that could be Luis or
That solves
Louis.
the
And
problem.
that's why exactly. So if you want to call me Lou, it'll be just the same. But you know, I already know that you natively call me Luis. Heather calls me Luis, and a lot of people call me Luis. And on the YouTube platform, that's the name that people have been, using towards me, and I'm fine with it. So, Luis, Mr. Camera Junkie, is just fine with me. But if you call me anything else, don't think that I'm gonna take offense to it because I'm just gonna respond to it either way. It's the intention that counts.
Cool, cool. Okay. I was like, I should have asked this ages ago, but I keep forgetting. And one of the reasons that I thought of that was because one of the ways that you first popped onto my radar was in Peter Gregg's live streams. And Peter Gregg calls you Lewis. So I was like, oh, Lewis. And then I was like, wait, I think if his last name's Vega, maybe it's Luis. But let's talk about Peter Gregg for a second. Because Peter is so interesting when you find his channel, and it's very different from what other people are doing on the platform, but at the same time he's also like cutting edge in his own way, where he's running, he's always running the newest computer, the newest cameras. He finds ways to push eCam to the limit, so he's got rotation thing. Like, it's pretty cutting edge, but it's also got like a very friendly, warm, inviting thing. How did Peter Gregg show up, and why are you there every week, for a year now?
Okay, well, that's a great question. Um, how I found Peter Gregg, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how, but as always, it has to do with the YouTube algorithm. I was already within the photography camera niche, and that's what I had, dedicated my time to research. So the platform was just popping up the creators that, were just falling in line to what I was interested in. And it being the fact that, you know, I'm starting to try to put these things together, but it was being subscribed to, I believe, Peter Lindgren that allowed me to find your channel. And I think maybe finding your channel and just, watching some videos allowed it to pop up Peter Gregg. And then that's when, just the algorithm working its magic. And like I said, it was almost like an inevitability that we were to eventually meet because there were so many similarities, and being in like the same little area of YouTube, it was just a matter of time that we were going to cross paths.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the same exact thing that during the lockdowns, me personally at that time, 2020 was a personally rough year for myself, as it is for, I bet, a bunch of people out there. And then just coming home, tired at the end of a day, and having something to entertain yourself with, because already at that point, being past the birth of my son, as basically I was already not watching TV, but as soon as Aiden was born, TV was no longer part of my life. So my entertainment came from the YouTube platform, and to have a friendly voice, a friendly face, and a conversation that was always positive at the end of every night was so amazing, especially through that time. And Peter himself has said that that's one of the biggest reasons that he started the channel as well, that he saw the need of the world itself and the condition that it was in, that he just decided to do the most that he could, and that's when he started live streaming. And it's been a incredibly positive effect that Peter has left on the world and on the YouTube platform.
Yeah, I agree. I love Peter and I love what he does, and it's so admirable. And he's also, he's someone who's not afraid to let the seams, like if he's doing a 7-hour live stream, he'll walk out of frame for a few minutes and go use the restroom. Like,
Yeah,
like it's kind of
you
cool
can't
that
get more real than that.
exactly, and that's where it's like, okay, it just feels like a real person. He's talking to people. It's the same thing where there's everybody in the chat. It's a very cool, special place. So if you are listening to this, go check out Peter Greg with 2 G's. He's got his main channel, he's got his live channel. Go check them both out. And now I did want to wrap up. My writing got really funky here, but I keep making notes as I have ideas. Oh yes, here we go. We can wrap up on a simple, fun one. Since you are Mr. Camera Junkie, I want to talk about cameras a little bit.
Okay.
It's a 2-part question, and you can be as in-depth or as short as you want. So I'm curious about, like, what is your main camera and lens that you're using right now? And if budget were not an option and you could just order, go to B&H and order anything you wanted, what would your like most ideal camera lens setup be?
Okay, so what I'm using is the Sony A6100 with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens. I absolutely love this combination because it gives me a wide view, but it's rectilinear, so it doesn't have the distortion that you normally get from a fisheye or like a wide angle lens that has that type of distortion. But 16 millimeters on an APS-C lens or APS-C camera will actually give you a 24 millimeter equivalent, which 24 millimeter is my favorite. And that's why I love using this setup, because it's small, compact, and it gives me the image that I want. Now, if I had an infinite budget, I know some people probably go, Airy Alexas and all this stuff. I'm still pretty much practical because I would still want a camera that I would be able to use myself. And at this point, with what's available on the market, I'm being realistic in telling you that if I had an unlimited budget, I would probably still buy the Sony A1, the Alpha One, 50 megapixel incredible stills camera, 8K recording, anything that you want on video. And that camera will probably be the camera that I would use from right now. If I were to have it today, probably for the next 8 to 10 years, easy, without having a need to upgrade. And the only thing that I would really have to cater is probably getting a backup of that camera and the lenses that I want. So if I had an unlimited budget, I would still probably say the Sony Alpha 1 and the 24 f1.4, or maybe the 50 millimeter f1.2, because I've been hearing a lot of good things about that.
You just it's an unlimited budget. Just get both of them.
Well, yeah. So if it's unlimited, I would definitely go primes, and I would go 24, 50, and 85.
Okay.
And I'll be good.
What do they call it? Like the Holy Trinity. And then actually, this is a question I had earlier, because you said, yeah, when I did research that and I got really into not just the photo part of it, but the tech that goes into cameras, and then you jumped into Camp Sony over here, which is interesting because clearly there must have been something. What pulled you in that direction versus any of the other camera systems?
Oh, that's a great question. But what pulled me to Sony, believe it or not, is the autofocus. Now, a lot of people can say a lot of things about image quality and things like that. Me, it was mostly on the photography side.
Oh.
And on the photography side, autofocus will trump anything else, because when you're dealing with colors, you're taking care of those colors on the post production. So that really is a futile type of like reason for you to stay with a particular brand or company, is to say that, oh, I like the colors preferred to another one, unless you're really shooting in JPEG, which I'm not. So
Right, because you can just change everything, but you can't fix the focus in post. That makes sense.
And the thing that really drew me to Sony is their eye autofocus for portraits in photography, and the fact that allowed me to be more creative with my photography instead of just being kind of plain Jane.
Right.
The fact that I did not have to worry about getting the eye in focus allowed me to spend the time behind the camera worrying about my composition and things in frame that might be distracting to the eye, and make sure that I took care of those in camera or at the moment before having to do or spend a lot of time in post-production, touching up or fixing photos.
Super smart. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Lou, Mr. Camera Junkie. Before we wrap up, I'll put links in the show notes so people can find and follow you everywhere. But if you want to direct them anywhere, where would you like people to go?
Well, I believe you can find me on MrCameraJunkie.com, but that's really just going to redirect you to the YouTube channel because I don't have anything set up besides that right now.
Smart to have the URL, though.
Yes, that's kind of what I did with the channel name, right? I made sure that I had it before anyone else could take it. But yeah, you can find me on any social media platform. I'm even on TikTok. So you look me up at Mr. Camera Junkie, you're going to find me. And I was lucky enough to find a name that nobody else really uses. So you can find me at Mr. Camera Junkie just about anywhere and everywhere.
I love it. No one else could be Mr. Camera Junkie at this point. Well, thank you so much for spending time today. Be sure to thank your boss, Aiden, for letting you have time off to come in and do this today. And if you have any thoughts or questions, or you want to add input, even though Mr. Camera Junkie won't be here next week, but if you want something that you want to share with him, you can always send me a message to tom@enthusiasmproject.com, either text, voice, or video. And I'd love to have your thoughts, have you be a part of the next show. So thanks again so much for being a part of today's show. Thank you all for listening. And we will see you next time. So now I'm going to try to very gracefully play the outro music and we'll wrap up the show. So thanks so much for listening, everybody. We will see you next time.